Good afternoon. We're going to the next section, which is, which is fairly short, how to deal with financial institutions, which we've already hit a lot of the high points. And then Robert is going to go through the major portion of marketing, which is internet marketing. I'm going to hit upon the generic stuff first. Any questions about anything we've covered so far? Like in sex, everything comes at the end in the seminar. It's actually the last couple of days, and tomorrow's the last day, which is Saturday. And we cover the high points, and we go through a summary. We go through a pre-summary, and then a pre-conclusion, then a conclusion. And I'm often asked why I repeat some of the stuff so many times. And of course now we've added the new section on fear and how we're genetically coded to be afraid, and it's either fear, flight or fight, etc. And the reason I cover some points so much, and especially the emotional bank account, because although intuitively before I started doing this almost 20 years ago, I knew that the decisions that were made normally because they couldn't deal with them emotionally. And people were just scared. And when I first started 40 plus years ago, we didn't talk about emotional bank account or emotional capital. And in those days, it wasn't called Human Resource Department, it was called Personnel, and a lot of things have changed in 40 years. But what hasn't changed is there's still successful people, day in and day out, start with nothing and build large organizations that are worth quite a bit of money. We've just named but a few of the ones that you know for, since you've been growing up. Some of these guys and gals have built up companies, started building up companies before you were born. Warren Buffett and a few others fall into that category. But unless you, as individuals, harness your own abilities, and one of those abilities is your ability to fight or flight, you'll find it extremely difficult to do any of the things that we've talked about. When Robert talks about the internet marketing, which is a relatively new game, it certainly wasn't around 40 years ago when I got started, and although a number of you are involved either directly or indirectly, every business can be helped through internet and the internet marketing. From the biggest companies like Siemens, IBM, General Motors, to smallest companies, one-man bands. And so it's really crucial. For you, it's going to be easier in some instances to be able to grasp some of the concepts because you grew up with the internet. And I was talking to Benoit, he's been on the internet since he was a little baby, more or less. Some people still say he's a little baby, but that's a whole other different subject matter. But whether you're on the internet or you're in the lumber business, like the guys from Austria, you have to take action. Okay, now let's briefly start. How do you make your banker get hot and excited about every doofus little deal? I've already hit upon this on several times, but too many of you come hat in hand to a financial institution. Hat in hand meaning bowed down, like you have rubber in your legs. And they want to think that you're positive. They want to think that you're passionate. They want to think that you're emotionally stable. So we got to trick fuck them into think that you're emotionally stable. Because if they don't think you're emotionally stable, you'll never get them to pass the first steps of your own business transaction. We want them to think you're mature. More importantly, we want them to think you're not just emotionally mature, but you're financially mature. we want them to think you're all grown up. And for the kids that are from the gypsy caravans, that'll be a little harder of a task. But it's not impossible. Bob from Bavaria, who left early, left last night, had a transaction that he came here with 2.5 years ago, after he had waited 13 years to come here. 13 years, and we've already talked about it, and I've written about it in my newsletters. And since the seminar till actually in the first year that he left the seminar, he was involved in 1.5 billion euros in deals. Some as an advisor, but many of them as a principal, where he put money in his pocket. Now his problem is, as we discussed, he's got assets that are worth that will last between 50 and 100 years. He's 43 years old. Even on the short end, 50 years, I hope he lives that long. I mean, there's a good chance that he won't live that long. But he's certainly not going to live 100 years. So now he came here wanting to build up some net worth, and he wasn't as worried about estate planning, passing it on to the next generation, etc., etc. Well, now he's got a big estate planning problem because he's got many tens of millions of euros worth of assets that are going to last probably 100 years. Well, that's a whole different kind of problem, and we're going to work through it. And he's going to figure out what the smartest thing to do, and I've already mentioned it earlier today, and I did to him before he left, is because the interest rates being so low, he's got to refinance. Because on top of it, he wanted to be debt-free, because he's a conservative German. No debt, as they say. And I told him that as a conservative person, he's got to be in debt up to here, because he can refinance it at 2, 3, 4%. And all his business is government guaranteed, so it's a money machine. Well, each one of you can be involved in some other kind of money machine, whether it's internet related or whatever. But if you don't continue to keep asking yourself questions, and how do I finance this, how do I get the banks interested, or how do I deal? In this particular case, as I told you earlier, the banks are bringing him deals. The municipalities and the local governments are bringing him transactions. Remember, I told you one of the most important things that you'll learn here is deal flow. Well, deal flow is not his problem. Now, I've been doing this a long time, and I don't believe I've ever seen where deal flow is not a problem until now. Of course, I've never seen assets to last 50 to 100 years either, that are government guaranteed, with no debt. So even though I've been doing this over 40 years, this is a first. And where should it happen but in the fatherland? Where should it happen but in Bavaria? You know, and I don't want to get into who started a bunch of wars, but we're right back to the fatherland. And the fatherland, as I've already said, they were going to build a race that lasted 1,000 years. Well, Bob from Bavaria is on his way to making assets last 1,000 years. Okay, if there's no questions, we'll get started. Thanks, Megan.